Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Literally my pleasure. I was looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you. I am so excited because the purpose of this podcast is for earlier stage entrepreneurs and focused around building community online.
Love
and that is something that I think, I was just talking to you about this, I think you do better than most.
And I was saying it's so funny that you feel that way because you're the expert and I don't feel like I do. So we'll have to unpack that in a little bit.
Yeah. Well, which I'm curious about. But the first thing I wanted to ask you, because I something I was really blown away by at your round table was how many different people knew you from different seasons.
Yeah.
Which I think is the power of a personal brand.
Yeah.
And I was actually so blown away. I was sitting next to Chelsea and Chelsea was like, oh, I knew Chris and Lori from Isogenics.
Yeah.
And I had to ask what Isogenics was.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Big supplement company, yeah.
Yeah, that's not how I knew about you.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. Then there's all these people who know Lori from her book life,
yeah,
from her event life, and then from her fitness life, and then now with like Pink, right?
So many lives ago.
Yes.
We're like cats.
Like cats. What life are you on?
You know what's funny? We're going to go from the cat analogy to like the Many Lives, Many Masters book. You ever read that?
No.
Where it's kind of like a book about reincarnation and you have many lives and the more you work your way through the lives, you become an older and older soul. I don't think I'm on like my last level if it was a video game.
Okay.
But I'm kind of an old soul and even was as a kid.
Okay.
So who knows what life I'm on, but somewhere advanced.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree advanced. Well, I'm curious for you. Maybe you can talk about like how you kind of got started in the entrepreneurial game.
It's funny, my trainer just asked me this yesterday, ironically. And I said, well, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. And then as we do more training sessions, you can unpack what you want to unpack. So I'll give you kind of the same answer there. So I was kicked out of college after 2.5 years. And I mean, literally kicked out. Like, we don't want your money anymore. Private college, they take anybody. They're like, don't come back anymore. Stop. It's because all I do is party. And I literally did not go to one class or buy one book that last semester when they finally kicked me out. And it wasn't because of any other reason other than I didn't want to be there. I was there for the wrong reasons. I already wanted to be out participating in the economy. Like I knew at a young age, I just wanted to be out making money and making deals happen and all that stuff. So when I got kicked out, I went and I got a job at a car dealership. Now my parents were devastated. They're like, my son was going to college. Like he had these plans and now he's working at a car dealership. But I was excited because I was like, I'm going to learn sales and leadership and be around cars I love. and I was right. If you learn sales and leadership, which I learned there over the course of a couple of years, you can write your ticket anywhere you want to go. So it went from car dealership to mortgage business, got hooked up with the world's largest bank at the time. And then I spent 8 years at that bank roughly, climbing the ranks there. Now, it was awesome until it wasn't. Then, 2008, 2009, the recession hits and it's a banking recession. And I spent a year flying around, laying people off one by one for an entire year. And then it became my turn. And they said, you can have a demotion of a demotion of a demotion of a demotion and ride this thing out, the recession, in a branch in Jersey. I was living in Minneapolis at the time. Or you can take your severance package. I said, give me the severance package. I remember they said to me, they're like, don't you want to go home and check with your wife? I said, nope, trust me. She wants me out of here too because I was so miserable once the tides had turned. I gained 30 pounds. We were living beyond our means and all the bonuses shut off. So like finances got really bad. We had to start from below zero. But this was a really important moment. It wasn't a moment that felt good, but it was an important moment. I had to go home. I said, Lori, we are basically losing everything. We got to sell this great big house that we just built for less than we built it for. So we short sold it, which is like one step before foreclosure. We got to get rid of all the cars, get rid of everything, and start over in a tiny little apartment in uptown Minneapolis. And I remember when I broke that news to her, I was like, oh God, what is she going to say? She paused and she was quiet for a while. And she looked at me and she said, I'm never going to let this happen again. And that is the answer to your question. That was what pushed us into entrepreneurship. So she went off and built her fitness career first, that then turned into a self-development career, that then turned into the hydration and beverage career that she has now. I went and took a partnership in a mortgage bank, sold my portion to my partners after a few years, came home, helped Lori grow her brand, then wanted to grow my personal brand, and then started all the other things, started investing in startups, and now I'm growing the peer-to-peer lending app. All of that came from that moment where we were stripped of everything and got the chance to say, all right, time out, catch our breath. What do we really want to do and how do we really want to show up? So while I don't wish that type of situation on anybody, if it happens to you or if you're there right now, you're going to look back on it if you choose correctly, if you embrace it, and it's going to be one of the best moments of your life.
Your rise.
Your rise, or the beginning of it, maybe your first step.
That's so powerful. And I think it's interesting because so many people start their careers in like the corporate way.
Yeah.
And then they get into entrepreneurship, and I bet you never go back.
I'm unemployable.
Yeah.
No, I'm dead serious. And I look back and I was kind of unemployable. The only reason I did well at the bank was because it was like being an intrapreneur. I ran my own teams and I could do it my way and did the hiring and the firing and all those things. So it felt like you were running a business within a business. But for the most part, if I had to get a job, I don't have the personality where I can just comply and do what they ask me to do and have a ceiling on what my potential is.
That's powerful because I think I'm the same. Like when I was trying to figure out whether to be an entrepreneur, the soul-sucking jobs were the ones where I had like a lot of micromanagement.
Yeah.
But the ones where I was free to do whatever, I was like, I can work here for the rest of my life. I get to create, and I think that's what drew me to entrepreneurship. And why I ask about all of this about your background, because I think that what's been so powerful about you is kind of what I said, is like this personal brand aspect and how you've pivoted all of these times. And this is probably not even your last pivot.
No. Gosh, no, I'll have a lot of pivots. So here's the thing about a personal brand. This is why everybody should build a personal brand, no matter what you want to do, no matter what season of life you're in. Even if you're fed up with what you're doing right now and you want to do something totally opposite. A lot of people from your personal brand who follow you today for what you do will come along with you on that new journey. So it makes starting over easier, or it makes a pivot easier, or it makes starting a new company easier than if you were starting from ground zero. Lori and I were talking about this on a walk yesterday. There's two types of founders out there of these great companies. There's the founders where they've never had a personal brand, so they had to find different ways to get the word out about their new product, about their new company.
Yes.
Then there's founders who early on understood the importance of a personal brand. They are the ones that have the shortcut. Because now, for example, this peer-to-peer lending app that I'm building, I already know that I've got the audience to be the lenders and the borrowers on it. I've got the investors in my audience. They showed up big time last week when I started raising capital for it. I've got the people to be advocates for it. So having a personal brand just makes all these other adjustments that you want to make in life that much easier and faster.
And you said it before, where when people are looking to invest in any kind of business, it's about the founder.
Yeah, it is. It's founder first, product second, always.
And so I'm sure when people are looking to invest in you, they have seen you be successful over and over again, and they've been watching you and watching you rise.
Yeah.
They know that you're going to make this happen.
Well, I would hope so. And, I've got a business partner, Matt, and he's already built and sold a 9-figure tech company, right? So talk about pedigree and a example of success to follow already. Yeah. So between the two of us, I feel really confident that we're going to crush this thing. But you're right. When you're investing in a company, or when you're looking to be a part of somebody's journey, it's founder first, it's product second, it's what is their likely path to an exit third. And then the fourth thing for Lori and I, when we invest in a company, it's can we move the needle for that company somehow? If number 1, 2, and 3 are there, right? Like great founder, great product, and they've got a pretty good path to an exit, meaning selling the company. But that fourth piece isn't there, where we can't really contribute towards growing the company, we'll pass on that investment. Otherwise, it's just like gambling or taking a risk. We like to be able to have active input in the companies that we invest in.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that that's actually something that I knew that you invested, but I didn't know that you actually invest in terms of your own time and your own kind of...
Absolutely.
energy.
Yeah. I haven't sat and counted. I'm going to say about 20 startups that we've invested in. I think right now there's 14 that are still alive and going really, really well. When you invest in startups, the bulk majority of them are going to fail. It's just the numbers. It's just how it goes. So we've got a good number of them that we still either sit on boards for or help guide. And it's so much fun because you learn so much about other businesses and other sectors that you wouldn't learn otherwise. It's not like you can have a job or start a company in all these different sectors. But if you invest in it and you carve out a spot for you to be active in growing parts of it, now you get to see behind the curtain. Now you get to learn from that founder. Now you get to learn from that industry. So I think that's one of the things that's given Lori and I the ability to speak on so many different businesses and teach on so many different businesses is because we've put our money where our mouth is and our time and our energy where our money is, learning as we invest in all these different sectors.
And what an amazing way, too. I didn't think this was going to go this way, but what an amazing way also to grow your network and your community. Oh,
people don't talk about this enough. When you hand somebody a great big check and say, I believe in you, you are not only giving them a vote of confidence, but it's a different kind of bond. They will now introduce you to other investors in that company. They'll introduce you to their partners. They'll introduce you to other people that they think might be able to help you, right? It's an equal energy exchange. It's almost like when you invest into somebody's startup, you're also buying your way into a whole new community that you may not be able to get into otherwise.
And how have you found yourself like leveraging that?
Relationships.
Yeah.
So I always teach relationship capital is more important than any other capital out there, including, money capital.
Totally agree.
And here's why. Money is important, don't get me wrong. But let's say you are totally down and out, broke, starting over, and didn't have a dollar to your name. But let's say you also had great relationship capital, a great reputation, a string of successes before this temporary moment of taking a time out. You were someone that people knew they could bet on. That relationship capital that you built up over all that time, those are the people who will invest in your idea, or who will say, hey, you know what, I'll build your website for free. You've always done well by me. Or, hey, you know what, I'll run your social media for you a while because I believe in your new venture. Those are the people that show up and donate their time, their energy, their expertise, maybe their money, because you built up that relationship capital. It's the most important thing that you can invest in and stack.
That's amazing, because one of the things I think about all the time is, and we were briefly talking about this prior, is that sometimes people, when they are in business, they only see relationships for dollar signs.
Yep.
And I am about the long game.
Got to play the long game.
Yeah, where I have people coming out of the woodwork that I met 5 years ago before I was even in business.
Yeah.
Who are like, hey, I know somebody who needs social. I'd love to make the connection. They're some of our best clients.
Yeah.
But it's because I'm not putting the pressure of I need to lead. And I think that's something that a lot of early stage entrepreneurs need to hear, is because it's easy when you're in scarcity, when you're in that apartment in Minneapolis.
You feel like you need the payoff right away, right? But you got to push that feeling aside. You got to play the long game and know that you're planting seeds that'll turn into a crop one day, that the crop is what you'll feed from when you actually really need it. And I get it. It's hard when you're broke. You don't know where your rent's coming from. You desperately need some kind of break. But you can't give in to that need. You've got to play the long game and do the right thing by people all the time. Time will always reveal your agenda, right? So just serve, unattached to any kind of outcome. And if you do that enough, believe it or not, the outcomes will always tilt in your favor.
I totally agree. And something that you didn't mention about your story that I know about your story, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to share this. I can cut it out if not. Is when you and Lori got into this apartment, you guys chose an apartment very intentionally.
Yes. Can
you talk about that?
I'm so glad you brought this up. So here's what we did. And actually, let me go back to the story a little bit. So when we had to short sell the house and all this stuff, it was a great big home we had just built. We had to sell all the furniture, the TVs, everything that we just furnished that house with on Craigslist. So car after car would pull up in front of this house, and person after person would come through my front door, and they'd bargain for the couch, or they'd bargain for the kitchen table. They'd bargain for I'm not kidding you. And they'd walk out with our stuff for pennies on the dollar. But guess what that did? It gave me just enough cash in hand. I'm trying to remember what it was. Is about $40,000. Now, keep in mind, we probably sold $400,000 worth of furniture, TV, or stuff. But it was like $35,000-$40,000, and that allowed us to prepay an entire year in this condo building where we were renting a mother-in-law suite. So everyone else had these big, beautiful, multi-million-dollar condos. One of the rich people in that building, they were renting out their little mother-in-law suite. It was like a 900 square foot little loft with a sliding wall between the bedroom and the family room. We rented that, prepaid it. It was a very expensive. A financial advisor would have told you this is the wrong move, right? But we knew it was the right move because we wanted to be in the building with the people who inspired us, who had the connections, who could speak life into us, who could, give us advice, and it worked. That year, we made so many relationships. We got so much advice. I've got lifelong friends still from that building. It was the best move we ever made. So the point of that story is, when you can, put yourself in proximity of the people that can make your journey easier, because it is a big factor in how fast you're going to make your comeback.
I think there's no better way to grow your community than to be around like-minded people. And that's even part of my draw towards Arizona. I'm like, the people here are second to none. There's so much community. There's so many like high vibe entrepreneurs. And that's like what I want to be a part of, right? And you can create those spaces at home, and that's something that we're working on too. But there's also an element of like, if you know that there's an area you want to be in, like finding your way in there.
Burn the boats, burn the bridges, and get there. It's so funny because I think people are brought up to think, and you know what I like about everyone rips on the younger generations right now. One of the things I like about them, they're not afraid to just pick up and move.
Yeah.
I'm watching them. They're very mobile, right? They're not attached to things. They're not attached to homes and cars. And all. They'll pick up and they'll just move where the vibe is. Mm-hmm. And I actually applaud that because when you do that, like you said, you're getting around like-minded individuals that will pitch in on your dreams, that'll pitch in on your journey, that'll lift you up when you're down, that'll kick you back in the game when you're having a bad day. And you do the same for them. And it's that collective of being where all the action is that makes your business, your goals, your journey that much more successful, that much quicker.
And so what if somebody was in a situation where they were just getting started and they didn't know where those people were?
I would join virtual groups and start to look for hotspots. Like when I say hotspots, I mean like on a map. Yeah. Oh gosh, everyone in this group seems to be from Austin or from LA or from Scottsdale or whatever it might be. Look for these little hotspots where you start to develop these relationships. Go visit them, stay with them, and see, is this place dope or not? And if it is, don't be afraid to live there for a year. People, especially my generation and maybe the generation right below mine and sure as hell the generation, older than me, they think moving is such a big permanent thing. Like they got to put all this thought into it. No, fuck it. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on here, but just go dip your toes in it. Yeah. Try it for a year. If it's meant to be, awesome. If it's not, you can always move back. Stop making everything so significant all the time.
Yes. And I think that's like a life lesson, especially in business. You know what I mean? Is that like nothing is permanent. And if you think about 5 years in business, like right now I run a social media agency. I love it. I might not in 5 years. Right. And I might be on to my next thing. And I think that's where community...
You will be. You're going to change. Everyone changes.
Yeah. And that's where I think community is so important is because, and personal brand, right? Is like being consistent with those things and always building your community, always showing up like as much as you can on social. Yep. And I think for you, when you had said you were talking about consistency and you were like, I don't know that I'm not consistent on social.
Yeah.
I think you build so much know, like, and trust. And it's like people know your dog's names. Like people see where you and Lori like to go for dinner. Like so when it comes time for you to sell, you're in a good position because not only have you added a lot of value, but people are connecting with these like personal elements about you that a lot of people don't always know.
That's interesting. I'm glad you say that because I look at my posting and lately I've made a new commitment, right? So we've got a team that's posting for us every day, sometimes a couple times a day. But prior to that, I just didn't make it a priority. I just didn't care that much. But I have been consistent on stories always. And that must be where that know, like, and trust factor comes from. Yeah. Is that my stories are just literally what I'm doing that day. And I think that must be where that trust factor over time, that consistency comes from that you're talking about.
I think stories are like the number one way for people to be actually building their own community. Because like feed posts and reels and all that stuff, you're like trying to generate like new people. Right. But the stories are where you're like hugging your like current audience and you're showing them who you are and how you show up. And so I think that that's the most amazing piece. And one of the things I think, for you to level up, and not that you asked me for my advice, but classic.
But I'll always take it because I told you offline, your advice is always great. So I'll always take it.
But I think you, like when you are showing up in some of these spaces, I've seen you speak at Fast Foundations, your roundtable, like I was blessed to be a part of the first one, like but more behind the scenes there. Yeah. Because I think like you build so much hype and everyone knows how much value you add that I think like having more, like you need like a little minion following you around. We had that right before COVID happened. Okay. And I don't want to say little minion. We had an incredible, awesome woman named Alyssa that followed us around. And we were actually starting a reality show that we were going to put on YouTube. What? And then COVID happened, shut the whole thing down. And then my dad died, right after LA got shut down for COVID. Those two things made me check out of the game for almost 2 years. Yeah. See, I don't even know if you know this, but like we were on rocket ships until COVID happened, like many people. That was that big timeout that we all got to say, wait, do I really want to be on this rocket ship or not? Do I really want to be going the direction that I'm going to the things that, and for me, especially after Dad died, the answer was no. I wanted different things. I wanted a giant timeout. I wanted space mentally and physically and metaphorically. Right? That's why we picked up and moved, and that's why we experimented with, bought a bus and drove around the country for a while, like all the things. And it was, I don't even know how in the world we got on this topic. What was it? I totally forgot where in the world we're going with this. A reality TV show. Oh, yeah. Okay. So one of the things I realized was I didn't want somebody following me around all the time, capturing everything. Right. I lost interest in social media and putting my life out there. But now that I took those couple of years to mourn the loss of my dad and to catch up my breath almost, now I'm getting back in the mood to put a lot more content out there. And especially, like you said, the behind the scenes content. Yeah. And something I've heard you say in other rooms, and I always laugh about, like, I tease you about this in the best way, is you always say your biggest regret is that you weren't on YouTube.
Yes, it is. That I didn't get a bunch of video. It is. Because we could be monetizing the daylights out of, you know, advertising dollars on that.
But, like, what a blessing in your life that your biggest regret is that you were on YouTube earlier.
Beyond blessed, right? If that's my biggest regret, then I don't have any problems worth talking about. Let's just talk about other people's problems.
Yeah, you're doing well. But, I think that it's never too late.
Yeah.
And I think for, like, even I was thinking about how many podcast episodes you must have. Like, even, like, tossing
I think almost 800 or something like that.
Oh, my gosh, that's nuts.
I'm so bad at, like, celebrating milestones. So is Lori. So, like, when she crossed 1,000 episodes, we didn't even know that she was crossing 1,000 episodes. Someone said, like, oh my God, tomorrow is your 1,000th episode. And she's like, what? We're so bad at, like, checking milestones. It's just not something that drives us.
But almost I think that speaks to your consistency with it.
I guess.
Because you're not thinking about it.
No, it's just habit.
Yeah, that you're like, and so that's actually something I want to ask you about is, like, so you've been building your personal brand, and you were kind of in the online game before many people have been.
Long time, yep.
Game. So if someone was starting new today, what would you tell them to focus on?
That's a great question. You know, you and I are big fans of podcasting. Yeah. And here's why I'm a big fan of podcasting. It is the easiest medium, the easiest platform for somebody to absorb what you are about, and especially on a regular basis. If you're asking me, Chris, what is ideal? I would say drop a daily episode, if you can, at least Monday through Friday. And notice, I'm not even doing that. I'm only doing 3 a week. But right? But if you could do a daily episode, short ones, doesn't matter, then people will get used to depending on your little dopamine hit that you give them. And when somebody listens to you that many times for an extended period of time, that know, like, and trust factor, it goes through the roof. They literally come to count on you. Once in a great while, I've never missed a week of releasing an episode ever. But once in a great while, I've missed, like, a Money Monday or something like that.
Right.
And I think, oh, no one's going to notice. Sure enough, people are like, hey, I'm looking for it. Did it not come out? Well, so people really grow to count on you. And if you're going to start with anything right now, it's probably one of the best things you can start with. Listen, it's audio, right? So you can listen to it in the car. You can listen to it when you're cleaning. You can listen to it when you are on a walk. You can listen. There's so many ways to consume audio and very few ways to consume video. That being said, remember, my biggest regret is that I didn't also make video a priority.
Yeah. I think it's 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah, like it is. It is.
Trying your best to make it like that. And I think the thing about podcasts that's so powerful, and what I think you've done such a great job with, is that people choose you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they look and they're like, oh, I'm choosing to spend this half an hour with Chris.
It's interesting. You're right.
Like, it's not, like, with social, you could get, like, sucked in, and then all of a sudden you're like...
The algorithm forces someone on you. Yeah.
You're deep in Alex Hormozy's reels.
Yeah.
You're, like, deep in, and you don't want to be.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
You know? But when someone chooses a podcast, they're choosing to listen to you. And that's where I think there's so much power in, you know, guesting for other people, and you know, you start to hear about those things, and, like, you're like, oh, I saw Chris here, and I've seen Chris here, and I'm like, oh, I should listen to this man.
Yeah.
And that's how people get connected. But I think when people are choosing you, I think it's, like, it's an amazing platform.
People underestimate the power of putting themselves on a podcast tour. Yes. You know, if someone's like, hey, I've got a good message, how do I get it out there in the world? I would say book yourself on someone's podcast every single day. It's so easy. You don't have to do any work. You just show up, they ask the questions, you give the answers. It takes 30 minutes to an hour of your time. You can do it in your pajamas on Zoom if you wanted. But when you get to share your message in front of everybody else's audience on a consistent basis, pretty soon you become omnipresent. And when you become omnipresent, that's when everybody starts to really notice, okay, I see this person everywhere. I hear the message everywhere. I better check out what they're doing and subscribe to them.
Yeah. And I think the value piece that is there, right? Like, if you're just showing up and consistently providing value, when it's finally time for you to sell whatever it is you're selling, people are lined up for it because they're like, oh, if, you know, Chris gives away this much value for free, of course I'm going to pay to be in his mastermind.
Back to that, playing that long game. You know, what people don't know is I send out that daily text every single morning I wake up, right? A positive money mantra or positive business perspective. Well, because of the cost of Community, the texting platform that I use, it's something like $4,000 a month. Yeah. Now, I ask for nothing in return. It's totally free. That's a pretty big chunk of money to pay every single month to do something for free every single morning of my life. But the reciprocation that happens by me waking you up to something positive, that you can count on that every single morning for now coming up on 2 years.
Wow.
That is really powerful when I send some kind of SOS or some kind of request, like, hey guys, raising capital, if you know anybody, let me know. Or, hey guys, we've got this thing called Roundtable, we're going to experiment with it, let me know if you want to come. Boom, sold out in 6 hours. It's because back to what we said earlier. Serve, 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 and reciprocity will tilt in your favor eventually.
Mm-hmm. Something I love that you're talking about too is the fact that, like, and again, it's this consistency, but it's like 2 years. It's not like you sent out 5 texts and you were like, I didn't make 10 grand off that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
People play the short game too much like that. Like, what did I get for my action?
Mm-hmm. And I see that all the time with podcasting, where people start podcasts and they're like, I don't know that I get the value, and it's such a long game. They
don't make it past like 5 episodes. Yes. Isn't that the common? I think that's what it is. Like 90-some% of podcasts never make it past episode 5.
Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because I actually think sometimes, and I have talked about this before, is that I think that podcasting is, yes, for the listener. Yeah. But it's also for your network.
It's for the listener. Yeah. It's for your network. It's for you to become a better speaker. Yes. Podcasting is the ultimate self-development. Can you stay consistent? Can you show up when you don't feel like it? Do you know how many times I do an episode when I don't feel like it? Like, if we're being real, a ton of them. I'll be busy or burnt out or tired or have too busy of a schedule, but I still get those episodes in. I still just say, okay, come on, man, go in the office, record this thing. So it's even like a bit of self-development, being consistent. People, they underestimate the power of, let's use small numbers, 100 consistent listeners every week. I want you to actually picture 100 people in a room. If every week, multiple times a week, those same 100 people showed up to hear you speak, that's amazing when you really picture 100 bodies. Now picture 1,000. If you have 1,000 listeners on your episode a couple times a week, picture 1,000 people in a room. That's a ton of people. That at that point you need a stage, right? Now when you get up to 5,000 listeners, 10,000 listeners, now you're getting into a small auditorium. Imagine being at a physical event with 10,000 people 2-3 times a week listening to your message. So you've got to just appreciate that number, whatever it is. Picture how many people is that? Even if it's 50, imagine 50 people coming to hear you 3 times a week. That's really powerful.
I told a client that recently because a client had come to us and they wanted to start doing podcasting, and they were like, oh, like, I've been doing podcasting for years, but I only get like 20 downloads. Yeah. I'm like, 20 downloads, you know, there's ways we can increase that. There's things we definitely can do. But 20 people are tuning in every week.
Every week. Those are 20 loyal people that also have other audiences.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, and that's, I think, what people don't. Well, that's what I'm wondering about you, Chris. Like, when you got started on your podcast, I'm sure your numbers weren't as high as they are now.
Oh, God, no. When I did my first 8 episodes, so, you know, I asked everybody, hey, how do you start a podcast? Well, make sure that you get at least 8 great episodes in you know, recorded ahead of time so you've got some good content. So I did it. I called in every favor I had. I got big names, big guests, and those first 8 episodes I recorded in a matter of a week. Now, the problem was, when I booked them, it turned out I had a really bad cold that week, right? You can't plan a cold. Yeah. So remember, I am a tech dummy. So I have my brother come in
Where's Nick?
and show me the whole, where's Nick? Show me the whole mixing board. And he says, all right, don't worry. If you have to clear your throat or something, just press this button. It'll mute the audio and you'll be fine. Well, I screwed it up. And so I thought I was muting the audio. My first 8 episodes, you hear me clearing my throat like 10, 20 times an episode. So I submit the 8 episodes. I'm all proud of them. My podcast producer messages us back and she's like, what the hell were you doing? You 10 to 20 times per episode, you're going while they're talking, dude. There's nothing we can do. So if you go back to my first 8 episodes, you can actually hear the audio cutting out. Like, it just goes blank for a split second and like weird, abrupt edits. It was the best they could do to clear all of my throat clearing out from those first 8 episodes. But that's how things start. Yes. That's real life right there. You got to keep going anyways.
Messy action.
Messy action.
And I think people get so like caught up and they're like, I need this. Like, we're in a podcast studio right now. Like, I need a podcast studio. I need these big mics. I need the ring light. Like, you know, you can do something. I've heard you do. Haven't you done some on your phone?
I do them on my phone, pulled over in my car many times. Yes. Many times. Yeah. Not a couple times, many times. You know, I travel a lot. I've got a really crazy schedule. I will go find a quiet place, pull over real quick into an empty parking lot, put the phone up on the dash, hit record, and do my episode. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be fancy.
And actually, listening to your podcast inspired me a lot when I was starting mine, because you edit your podcast, but like, if you mess up a word,
leave it in.
Keep going.
Yeah, there's no editing that stuff out.
Yeah, and I'm like, that is so like. I think there's so many people out there that are sitting there with scripts. Yeah. And they're so worried about how they're coming across. And it's like, that loses its authenticity.
It does. And I understand, you know, why they're worried about how it's going to come across. but they're making each episode too important. I am telling you, consistency over perfection every single time. Done is better than perfect every single time. Something is better than nothing every single time. And to be relatable. Now, listen, don't have distracting noise in the background.
No coughing.
No clearing your throat. Don't be in a busy airport. Have some respect for the listener.
Yeah.
But short of those things, it doesn't have to be this beautiful thing filmed in a studio. It can be a quiet space recorded on your phone and submit it to your podcast producer to clean up a little bit and post.
Absolutely. Okay, so I have one last question for you. This is the last thing I'm thinking about, but because I could talk to you all day, and I want to be respectful of your time. But
I'm doing fine on time, by the way.
Okay, great. If somebody was, a new entrepreneur and they were just starting their dreams and they're, or in their rise, whatever that looks like, and they had were starting from zero in a network, and it wasn't like they were they're not ready to move to Austin, they're not ready to do the big thing.
Yeah.
What would you tell them to build their audience?
How to build their audience? We touched on this earlier. I'd come up with what is my signature message, right? And then what is my signature tool that I can give away for free that'll make lives better that's related to that message. Once you have those two things, I would go put yourself and teach into every group that you can teach into, like people's masterminds, people's Facebook groups. I would get on every podcast that you could get on, right? I would learn to become really good at pitching myself. Here's why I will add value to your show or to your group. And I would get in front of as many other people's audiences as possible, blow their minds, and then lure them over with this really great freebie tool that you created that is high value. That's it. It's that simple. Do that consistently for 6 months. You'll be shocked at how big of a movement of an audience that you can create.
Do you recommend people niche down?
The short answer is yes.
Yeah.
The short answer is yes. But I also see people niche down too much. And I also see people delay getting started because they're really trying to perfect that niche. I would rather them start doing something for the next 6 months instead of waiting to perfect their niche for 6 months, because your niche is going to come and go. Your niche is going to change. I changed my podcast from For the Love of Money to The Chris Harder Show, but that was because For the Love of Money first told people what the show was about when nobody knew what it was. Then that niche that helped people say, oh, that's something I want to listen to, became a lid. And by taking the lid off, I was able to attract other listeners that weren't only there for advice on money. And I was able to talk about different things I want to talk about. So the niche helps at first to tell people why they would tune into you, but eventually it's going to change, or you're going to want to lift that lid anyways.
That's really great advice, because I think that's something that I see a lot of people struggle with, even myself. When I think about personal brand, I'm like, well, I run a social media agency, so that's what I should talk about. But I'm also passionate about how do people build relationships and how do people build community, and it's all in one in a lot of ways. But I think people get so what should I talk about? How do I talk about it? And
I think my wife Lori's show is the perfect example. It's called Earn Your Happy, right? Now, that could mean many things. Earn your happy, do the things that make you happy and healthy. Or it could mean earn your happy in terms of go out and earn the money that makes you happier. Do the business, right? There's so many ways you can take that. Over the past, I think it's been 6 years, I could be wrong, she's had way over 50 million, over 50 million downloads, okay? Off of something called Earn Your Happy. That could mean many different things, and she's talked about many different things. It's gone from talking about fitness when she cared about fitness, to talking about books and self-development when she cared about that, to talking about product founders is her new fun thing to talk to right now. So it is going to change. Your niche is going to change. Your subject matter can be diverse. Just deliver good stuff consistently. The rest will take care of itself.
Chris, I love that. Thank you. Okay, I have to share a little story with you, if that's okay. Of
course.
So, when we were at the round table, you asked us to do, hopefully I'm not spilling it, I won't spill it too many beans, but you made us do a visualization of our future self. And in my future self, I talked about my snowbird life, here in Arizona, partially. And one of the pieces was about interviewing you on my podcast. But this was 5 years out. And
this is 5 minutes later now.
Yes, I know. It's been 3 weeks. I haven't even had time to change my nail polish.
Me neither.
So I just want to say, like, thank you so much for, like, always, I think, challenging me, like, whether it's directly or indirectly, like, to think bigger.
Yeah.
And when I got my car, I remember I messaged you being like I want a Tesla, but like, if it wasn't for you, this would have been a Honda Civic, and I'd still be in my 9 to 5, because your podcast opened up so much for me, and I know it continues to do that for other people. So I just want to thank you for that, because I know my life would look so differently without you, but I can't even imagine how many people are listening to this and listening to your podcast who don't have the opportunity to do this yet,
right?
Who you've impacted.
Well, listen, you've collapsed time, but that's not an accident. I watch you show up in the rooms more than almost anyone else I can name. You've invested a lot of time and a lot of money to show up in the rooms, to build relationship. I watch you when you're in those rooms. You don't just sit there and absorb. You give and give and give. I remember at the recent roundtable, you said, "Oh, sorry to give this." And I told you, I said, "Stop saying you're sorry," because you have good things to say. So you don't just show up, you show up and you add a lot of value. You have done the work, and that is why you have collapsed time. And that is why when somebody like you says, "Hey, I'm going to be in town, I would love to record," it's a hell yes, because you're doing the do and you're making impact in other people's lives. And that is an equal energy exchange. People will show up for someone like you all the time. And so if other people took anything away from this, it's show up the way that you do consistently. Add value to other people the way you do consistently. Be a damn good person that is a joy to be around. I've told you, you light up the rooms when you're there, right? You bring up the energy when you're there. That's somebody that anyone will go to bat for anytime. That's the recipe right there.
Chris, thank you so much. That means the world to me. And I would love for you to tell people how they could get on your text list. Do you have you must have the number memorized.
Yes, I do. I've got it memorized. So text me the word daily to 310-421-0416. Again, if you do, it's totally free. No string, not free for me. I pay $4,000 a month for this, but free for you. I will wake you up to a positive money mantra or a positive business perspective every single morning, Monday through Friday. So just text me the word daily to 310-421-0416.
And Chris, I'd love, as a last token, I'd love for you maybe to tell people what you're up to right now and what people could be waiting for you from.
I am changing the world when it comes to people who are in a financial tight spot. And if I have time, I'll share the story real quick. So when you've got a brand that's around money and generosity, you automatically solicit a lot of people asking for money, saying, "Hey, here's my hardship. Would you give me a little bit of money?" And I got so many of them that I made a personal policy that I wasn't going to answer those, because you don't know what's real and you don't know what's not. So I would do my giving in verifiable ways. Except one of them, a few years ago, I got like a physical feeling that I need to answer this one. I call it from God, call it from whatever. It was a physical feeling saying, answer this message, give them what they want. So I did. And it was a landscaper. He said, "Hey, Chris, I'm so embarrassed to ask you this. I listen to your show. I'm grateful for everything, but I have a landscape company. I've got 2 guys that work for me, and I'm 2 payments behind on my truck. And if I don't get $680, they're going to repossess my truck. I'm going to lose my business, and those guys are going to lose their job. Is there any way that you would lend me $680? And I remember saying to him, I'm like, "I won't lend you the $680. I will give you the $680. I'll send it to you on PayPal. But all I ask is that you work hard to put yourself in position to do this for somebody else one day. And I believe in you." Now, I thought that was it. I thought I would never hear from this dude again. I didn't even know, is this real? Is it scam? I didn't care. I was just following a feeling. Sure enough, a couple months later, he gives me an unsolicited message back. He says, "Hey, Chris, I just want to let you know what you did for me that day. I took the money. I got current on the truck. Those 2 guys kept their job. But better than that, when you told me to put myself in position to do this for somebody else one day, and that you believed in me," he said, "for some reason, that lit a fire in me like has never been lit before. And I have gone absolutely crazy, getting as many new landscape accounts as I can, to the point where I'm now buying a second truck and hiring 2 more guys." And I thought, my God, $680. It's not a lot of money. No. I understand it's a lot of money to some people, but in the grand scheme of things, $680 was the difference between this guy going out of business and 2 people losing their jobs, or him catching fire and adding 2 additional jobs to the economy. And so I became obsessed. That was a seed that was planted. Obsessed with, how do I matchmake these people with these urgent needs? And people like me, they're like, "Hey, man, I'll bet on you." But then how do I incentivize the people to say, "Hey, man, I'll bet on you"? And that's by giving them really quick returns on these loans. So we are building a peer-to-peer, a person-to-person personal loan app where somebody who's in a dire financial need can go on and get $500 or $1,000 or $1,200 or whatever they need from somebody else who says, "Hey, I believe in you, and I'll give you the money, but you got to give me a little return back in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is that they agree upon. And the way we've built it is the borrower is the person who's in control. They are empowered. So normally when someone's in a tight spot, they get screwed, right? They're not empowered. We're giving them all the power. All the bids come in. They're blind bids. You can't see what other people have bid, right? So you got to put your best foot forward. And the borrower gets to choose from all of these bids what's best for them. Is it the lowest payment? Is it the lowest cost of funds? They choose the one that they want. We suck the money out of the winning bidder's account. We drop it in the borrower's account so they can get out of a jam. And then whatever those payments are, we do it in reverse. So we're going to create two things with this. We're creating a way for people to stop panicking when they're in a tight financial jam, and to keep them out of payday loan stores, which are predatory as hell, right? $1,000 turns into $3,500 overnight in those things. And then we're creating an opportunity for people with good hearts to make better returns on their money than they could get anywhere else, because people don't understand speed velocity of returns. I'd rather make 10% every 4 weeks by flipping my money than make 20, 30, 40% over the course of a year. The return is way better if you're making 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%. Many times throughout the course of the year.
Absolutely,
so it's a win-win for everybody, and I can't wait for this thing to finally get out there.
Grace, every time I hear about this, I get more information about it, which is like, I think how things launch, and I'm more excited about it. I can't wait to be a part of it.
Oh, that means the world coming from you. That means the absolute world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know how much generosity is on your heart.
Yeah.
And how impactful you can be to others, and I think this is just the beginning for you. So I'm so excited.
Well, what I love about the story is here it was just an act of generosity that I even know, was it true or was it false, right? Meaning, was this a scam or not? And that has given me back unexpectedly the biggest gift of my life, right? Short of Lori being my wife and being my life, this is probably the biggest gift I've ever been given, is this idea, this obsession over how do I solve this and create this app that'll be, massive.
Yeah, it is going to be massive. And I think me and Maria always talk about this in our business, but we always use this Bible verse about a cheerful giver.
Yeah.
And being a cheerful giver, about being somebody who's you're excited to loan or to give generously.
Right.
And I think that's something that you really embody.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That means the world.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you, Chris. And thank you again so much for all of this. And anything I can do to ever promote anything that you do, you know that I'm the biggest fan in your corner.
And right back at you. I hope you know that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks for having me on.